847 emergency calls flooded the dispatch centers in a span of only 12 frantic minutes, all reporting the exact same terrifying phenomenon across the city. Scalding steam began erupting from deep fissures that materialized out of thin air on public streets, private garages, and damp basements, leaving citizens paralyzed by an unknown and invisible threat. But what left world-class geological experts in total disbelief was the terrifying realization that this rising vapor was not random, but following a precise and deadly path through the crust. It was tracking a massive fault line, a jagged rift descending 8 kilometers deep into the earth, heading straight toward the infamous Mount Vesuvius, the monster that once buried ancient Pompeii. The recent seismic trail has achieved what modern geology swore was absolutely impossible by creating a physical bridge between Europe's supervolcano and the very mountain that decimated thousands of lives before. In less than 48 hours, Mount Vesuvius experienced its first deep-seated tremors since the year 1944, signaling that the sleeping giant is no longer resting peacefully in its bed. Intense heat is now skyrocketing along this newly formed fault as thermal maps reveal a massive underground tunnel growing wider and deeper with every passing second, threatening to collapse everything. Now, 3,500,000 people are trapped between two massive volcanoes that are no longer acting independently, but have essentially merged into a single, unstoppable engine of mass destruction. However, there is one chilling detail that high-level scientists are hiding from the general public, fearing that the truth would ignite a wave of uncontrollable panic throughout the entire Mediterranean. They quietly warn that this is merely the first domino in a sequence leading toward a total volcanic collapse, where one eruption could trigger a catastrophic explosion in the other mountain. Is it already too late for a mass evacuation of the metropolitan area? Or are we simply waiting for the inevitable moment when the Earth finally decides to reclaim its territory? On the 13th of March, 2025, a violent earthquake of magnitude 4.44 struck the caldera at exactly 3:42 in the morning, shattering the silence of the night. Residents of Pozzuoli woke up to the sound of breaking glass and crumbling stone as the most violent tremor recorded in over 40 years turned their peaceful homes into danger zones. When researchers began analyzing the data using advanced artificial intelligence, the system revealed 54,000 hidden microtremors that ordinary sensors had completely failed to detect at all. The caldera is not just shaking, it is literally tearing itself apart from the inside, as the seal is gone and the pressure continues to rise toward a critical breaking point. The sophisticated artificial intelligence system at Stanford University amplified seismic signals and exposed 54,000 hidden microtremors that ordinary machines completely failed to detect during the massive initial geological chaos. These tiny vibrations prove that the caldera is not merely shaking, but it is actually tearing itself apart from within as the crustal structure begins to give way entirely today. Stanford's analysis draws a scenario of absolute terror because the massive seismic event has officially activated the ancient circular fault lines that surround the entire Campi Flegrei caldera for miles. These massive fractures, which have been sleeping for several centuries, have suddenly returned to life with total force, releasing violent bursts of seismic energy that ripple through the Earth's crust. However, the real shock came when scientists observed the specific direction of these waves, proving that the tremor officially opened a massive conduit, descending 8 kilometers into the dark depths. This newly formed subterranean pathway is now channeling the entire magma pressure from the massive Campi Flegrei system directly into the chambers of the sinister and dangerous Mount Vesuvius nearby. Dr. Tatiana Ventura, a leading geophysicist at Stanford, explained the extreme gravity of this situation by comparing the thermal reservoir to a perfectly sealed and highly pressurized volcanic steam system. When the thick rock cap finally cracks, it creates new passages that completely disrupt the entire connected volcanic network, causing a catastrophic failure of the natural pressure seals forever now. The original seal is now gone. Internal pressure is rising rapidly, and alarm bells are screaming across every major monitoring center in Europe as the situation escalates beyond all control. In only a few hours, the Italian government was forced to activate the crisis committee in Rome to deal with what they now recognize as a total regional volcanic collapse. You must forget the comforting idea of a common tremor that passes quickly, as we are witnessing the total breakdown of two volcanic systems that were once judged completely independent. The catastrophic rupture, occurring in March of 2025, has broken every rule of modern geology by fusing Europe's supervolcano with the monster that once decimated the city of Naples. Lurking beneath the surface of Pozzuoli is a literal labyrinth of magmatic channels, chambers, and ducts united in a fragile and highly unstable balance that has finally been shattered today. When a single piece of this geological puzzle moves, the shock reverberates throughout the entire system, generating fatal consequences that were previously considered impossible by even the most experienced experts. This is no longer just a mountain about to explode, but an entire continental structure of extreme pressure that is beginning to collapse under its own massive and unbearable weight. Now this ticking time bomb has officially joined forces with its neighbor, creating a dual threat that forces 3 million residents to live under the constant shadow of total destruction. Historical records show 4 major crises since the year 1950, but the current pattern is far more terrifying because every new event arrives much stronger than the previous one. The cycle begins with the ground rising, a phenomenon known as bradyseism, where the magma forces its way upward and causes the very earth beneath your feet to bulge outward. In the city of Pozzuoli, this has turned into a permanent distortion of the terrain that has already caused ancient Roman ruins to be swallowed by the rising harbor waves recently. While the ocean consumes the past, the ground prepares for a new disaster as the pressure inside the heart of the caldera cracks the surrounding crust with extreme and violent force. Between 1982 and 1984, the burning fields released 16,000 earthquakes, forcing families to sleep in cars for weeks while their houses cracked and stone walls crumbled down. Beyond the violent shaking, the caldera increases the release of toxic gases, as boiling mud pits and fumaroles spit vapors filled with dangerous levels of carbon dioxide and heavy sulfur compounds. Sulfur and hydrogen sulfide leave the air with an unbearable smell of rot, causing residents to complain of constant headaches, nausea, and eyes that burn without any sign of stopping. Abnormal heat marks the final phase, as magma rises near the surface and causes the ground temperature to skyrocket in various critical points across the massive burning fields. Certain places became so incredibly hot that you can actually fry an egg on the bare stone, a bizarre sign of the hellish heat hidden just beneath the thin crust. NASA satellite data show that the region has been swelling for decades, with the ground rising an impressive 430 centimeters since the year 1950, changing the landscape. Currently, the soil is representing a massive jump of 340% compared to the normal levels for this sensitive area, as the pressure builds up much faster. The monster is waking up, but the catastrophic events in March of 2025 changed everything that the experts expected from this terrifying and sudden awakening of the sleeping volcanic giant. Only 2 days after the ground originally ruptured, it was impossible to ignore that the situation was turning into a major disaster for the population living in the southern region. Heat sensors along the new fissure recorded a sudden jump of 12 degrees, leaving specialists in a state of absolute shock as they realized magma was moving. Molten magma was running deep beneath the earth, turning that dark subterranean tunnel into a high-speed expressway for destruction that connected the supervolcano and the mountain that destroyed ancient Pompeii forever now. Vapors from craters quiet for centuries suddenly burst together across both systems, signaling a terrifying new level of synchronization between the burning fields and the mountain that buried thousands of people before. The volume of gas rose by 340% in less than 48 hours, creating pillars of smoke that were visible from the very distant and crowded city center today. Holes that had been silent for a long time began to roar with incredible power, throwing massive columns of smoke into the sky and darkening the sun for the many local residents. That vapor brought a somber warning, as chemical analyses proved the jet was loaded with sulfur from the deepest parts of the planet's molten core, indicating the magma was rising very fast. The chemical mixture shifted significantly, proving the origin was much deeper than before, And then came the tremors traveling directly from the heart of the infamous and deadly Mount Vesuvius right now. Since 1944, the sinister volcano has not shown this much activity. But now, it is experiencing deep tremors coming from the bottom of its own massive and highly pressurized magma chamber. The giant that buried Pompeii was awakening because of the chaos happening 8 kilometers away, forcing authorities to activate every emergency protocol immediately to save millions of lives from a certain death. For the first time in history, Italy will face these two volcanoes as a single unified threat, knowing that what happens in one will instantly affect the other in a deadly chain. The subterranean connection is growing larger every hour, and the world watches in total silence as the pressure builds toward an explosion that could redefine the map of the entire European continent. This terrifying idea that these two massive giants are physically linked is not entirely new, as geologists have suspected this volcanic partnership hidden beneath the soil for many decades now. They were believed to be part of an enormous, hidden network operating deep under the Italian ground, yet for several decades, no one could truly prove this controversial and daring scientific theory. However, the shocking events of March in the year 2025 officially changed the game forever when high-tech examinations finally revealed a massive magma ocean beneath the famous and dangerous Campanian Arc. This liquid fire lurks approximately 10 kilometers from the Earth's surface, traveling for many miles to connect volcanic systems that previously appeared to act entirely alone in their destructive and lethal power. Before this recent catastrophic discovery, traditional science only studied these mountains in isolation, but the evidence now suggests that in the distant past, they functioned as one single and unified organism. These massive volcanoes originally operated as a united system where magma flowed freely, and the pressure in one location would immediately affect every other part of the entire, massive underground network. When one giant erupted, the others would soon follow in response because they breathed together, as clearly shown by the ancient marks left on the surrounding rocks of this entire volatile region. The chemical composition of the ash from that monstrous explosion 39,000 years ago proves this total synchronization existed when the entire region contorted as a single and massive living beast. During those ancient times, the chemistry indicated a massive relief of pressure across the whole network as multiple volcanic systems entered dangerous eruptions, one after another, in a sequential and deadly manner. But as the millennia passed by, these subterranean paths eventually fell into a deep slumber when massive eruptions closed the tunnels and the hot magma turned into solid rock forevermore. The ancient roads closed, leaving the volcanoes isolated in their long sleep, while each giant became a ticking time bomb ready to detonate at any moment without warning the others nearby. Scientists continued to study them separately because they acted in an isolated way before the sudden and violent crack of March in the year 2025 changed the world forever now. The sudden return of this direct path between the two massive colossi has forced the clock of the Earth to turn back thousands of years in only a few short days. Ancient connections that remained sealed for thousands of years have reopened in just a few days, and now both systems operate once again as a single, unique, and lethal volcanic threat. That previous security of planning for isolated threats has reached a definitive end because the network is now fully connected and the shared pressure creates a truly terrifying and new reality. Naples and the surrounding region currently house more than 3 million people who live every single day under the shadow of a supervolcano that has just awakened from its sleep. While the morning coffee is still served hot in local cafes, the ground continues to shake with increasing strength, making all previous emergency plans completely obsolete overnight for the government. The government created emergency protocols thinking about the volcanoes acting alone, but the dangerous union of 2025 changed everything overnight. While traditional escape routes became completely useless for millions, in the worst-case scenario, if these two monsters decide to explode together, the massive logistics required to save everyone would become a nightmare that is practically impossible to solve safely. Escape routes leaving the burning fields lead directly into the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, meaning that paths of flight cross and cancel each other out during a total regional crisis. Traffic maps already indicate that highways would be completely locked within a few hours, as 3,500,000 people try to escape the approaching fire at the same time. Communication networks would suffer a total collapse, while medical and tactical support from the entire country would be unable to handle the sheer scale of such a massive volcanic disaster. Vents of steam are appearing every single day across the city of Pozzuoli, as asphalt twists and cracks, because the ground beneath is moving with incredible and unstoppable volcanic force. Buildings wake up with new fissures every morning, providing a constant and terrifying reminder to the residents that the subterranean pressure is rising toward a violent and definitive breaking point soon. The danger goes far beyond the city of Naples, as climate projections show that a double eruption would cover most of southern Europe with thick layers of toxic and heavy ash. No aircraft would be able to take off, while severe respiratory crises would explode in cities hundreds of kilometers away from the epicenter of the two massive and connected volcanic systems. The agricultural belt of the entire region would be buried under meters of volcanic debris, causing crops that sustain millions to be completely decimated in a matter of a few hours. A lack of food would generate a massive ripple effect throughout the European continent for many years, forcing governments to face a crisis they are not prepared to manage today. Scientists monitoring the connection use a term that gives chills to any public authority, calling this event the first domino in a sequence of total and absolute geological chaos now. They warn that the chaos beneath Naples could be the spark for the awakening of many other giants, including Etna in Sicily, Santorini in Greece, and the dangerous island of Stromboli. If this released pressure spreads through interconnected subterranean channels, it would cause a terrifying chain reaction of eruptions across the entire Mediterranean region, redrawing the maps of our modern civilization. A domino effect of this magnitude would happen on a scale never seen since the very beginning of human history, as millions of people live directly inside the impact zone today. Specialist Mauro DeVito explains that we are dealing with a paradigm of volcanic risk never imagined before, where the link between the giants threatens to redraw the entire southern landscape. Experts from across the globe are rushing to this critical zone, desperate for answers about this terrifying geological awakening, yet no current technology has ever witnessed such a massive connection live. The mystery is no longer if an explosion will happen, as the signs prove that the burst is inevitable, but the true scope of the coming destruction remains a dark secret. Will we face a tragic but local disaster restricted to Naples? Or is this the beginning of a chaos that will erase the current map of the entire European continent forever?